One of the simplest and quickest ways of applying a handle to a bow is by using braid. Cut one end at an angle and begin wrapping the braid around the handle section, overlapping the braid by a small amount and begin to spiral down the handle, keeping the amount of overlap even. We're doing this the first time without glue so that we can measure how much braid we need, and it's also good practice for beginners to give it a go without the glue so that you can try the method as many times as you like to get it neat. Here is a look at the same method with glue on the handle and some added decoration top and bottom. A lot of Victorian longbows had leather with gold leaf decoration. So we had these gold-leafed leather strips made with genuine Victorian pattern wheels. This piece is going at the top of a braid handle, so we need to mark where the leather strip is going to sit, and we can also mark the bottom section too. These marks will let us know where to start and stop with the braid. Next, we need to cover the handle with glue. The masking tape underneath gives a much better adhesive surface for the types of handle materials that we're using. The glue we're using here is HMG, but you can use any household type glue such as Bostik or Yoo-Hoo. Now we can lay on the braid with the same angled cut as before. Butting it up against the pencil line, a quick check with the leather trim to see if we have the correct placement. It should just cover the bottom of the arrow plate and the top of the braid. Place a small amount of the glue onto the angled cut end of the braid. This will help glue the first turn of the braid in place, as it will overlap this part of the braid rather than sitting directly on the handle that we've covered in glue. Do the first turn of the braid onto the braid itself, keeping the line of the braid parallel as possible to allow for the correct alignment of the leather afterwards. Continue down the handle, turning the bow with one hand and keeping a good grip on the braid so it fits tightly onto the glued area. Spiral downwards, incorporating a small overlap of the braid. Once you reach the bottom, cut the braid at the corresponding angle. Carefully using the scissors, lift up the last turn and apply some glue to that gap and to the end of the braid. Then begin tucking in the angled cut of the braid into the gap that you've created. Now we can start applying the leather trim at the top of the handle. After checking that there is enough to go round both top and bottom, we can cut the leather in half. Applying some more glue to the gap that we left at the top, also applying glue to the back of the leather trim. Put it to one side to go tacky and start applying glue to the gap at the bottom of the handle, and again apply glue to the other piece of leather trim. Once they've both gone tacky, we can start putting them onto the handle. Carefully apply the trim and decide where you want the overlap to be, as we will be cutting the trim and butting the ends together. Once in place, hold the excess trim that's overlapping and cut it in the desired place. Score and cut the leather carefully so as to avoid damaging the bow. Once you've finished cutting, remove any excess leather. By placing your thumbs onto the trim and pressing hard against the bow, check that there are no gaps. This may change the length of the trim when you butt them up together. If there is any excess left, you can use scissors to trim as desired. Once you're happy, you can obviously move on to putting the other trim at the bottom of the handle, but let's move on and show you a different type of handle covering. For this handle we will just be using leather, a green grip section with matching trim top and bottom. We've already cut the main section to size. We'll need to apply plenty of glue to the back of the leather. We've already put pencil marks on the handle to indicate where the trim will sit. Set the glued piece of leather aside to go tacky and cover the bow handle in glue. After a couple of minutes, the glue will be ready for us to apply the leather to the handle section. Be sure to get the piece of leather the correct way round and in between the pencil marks. As you can see, this piece of leather does not go all the way around the handle section. To avoid shrinkage problems on large sections of leather, we place on a piece of leather that is smaller than required. We allow this to dry overnight, then apply a small strip in the gap left by the main section. This minimises gaps in the leather. As we have to leave the green handle to dry fully, we'll carry on with another handle of the same construction started yesterday so we can show you the rest of the process. Here is our red leather handle that's already dry. We're going to cut off the excess of the edges of the leather to fit the smaller piece. We'll start off by taping down the edges of the excess and marking onto the tape the size of the extra piece of leather we're putting in. We'll be putting it in suede side up to give some pleasing contrast. Once the masking tape is firmly in place, we can remark the centre of the back of the bow. We can then get the new piece of leather and place that onto the centre line and mark down either side of it. Once we're happy with the marking out of the piece of leather, we can now begin cutting. very carefully. Having finished the cutting, we can now remove the tape and double check with our small piece of suede that it's going to fit in the gap we've made. We can then begin applying the glue. Start by gluing down the loose edges of the leather. Using a tube of glue with a thin nozzle really helps you get in underneath the gaps of the leather. Once you've finished gluing down all these edges, you can then begin applying glue to the rest of the handle, ready for our small section of suede. Once you're happy with the amount of glue applied to the handle, begin gluing up the back of the piece that we're going to slot into that gap. Once you've glued up that central piece, set it down to go tacky for a few minutes. Whilst we're waiting, we can double check that the edges on our main piece of leather is stuck down correctly, and if there are any gaps we can apply some more glue. Having given our central suede section enough time to go tacky, we can now start applying it to the gap on the main handle. Curling over the edges of this piece slightly will help us slot it in, as it will no doubt be a tight fit and make butting up against the rest of the leather a lot easier. After a bit of time and patience, we've managed to get this central suede section butted up nicely to the rest of the handle. All we need to do now is chop off the excess at the top and the bottom, ready for our gold leaf trim. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful and interesting. If you want to watch more videos on bow making, then we have plenty on our channel. I'll put some up on the screen. If you'd like to subscribe and like and share, then please do.